Kia ora and welcome to this Physiotherapy Board Te Poari Tiaki Tinana podcast. In this episode about digital health, our Chief Professional Advisor Damon Newrick is joined by Dr. Gloria Paterson, Annalise Jones, Matthew Dick and Dr. Karaitiana Tauru. They'll be discussing the advantages and disadvantages, challenges and risks to consider if you're thinking about using digital health tools, including AI.
Kia ora everybody, kia ora te whānau. Welcome to our webinar, one of the latest in the series of webinars. Begin today with karakia. Kia hora te maraino, kia whakapapa ponamu te moana. He hurahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai. Tātou ia tātou kata. Uie tai kie. Kia ora, welcome everybody. I'm normally joined by Marama, but unfortunately Marama can't be here today. So we are cracking on with an amazing panel of people today who I'll introduce as we go along. The outline for today really is we're starting to begin conversations around digital health and consider where we're at and what might be coming next, because I don't know about you, but 2 or 3 years ago, I couldn't have predicted where we're at now in terms of AI. And I certainly can't predict anywhere and where we were going and where we're heading. So really we're keeping in the back of our mind, how do we keep our kiritaki holder, our patients, our health consumers safe on the journey in all aspects? So physically, culturally, spiritually, and how do we do this in the context of delivering safe physiotherapy services in Aotearoa, New Zealand? We acknowledge really early there's a heap of information out there at the moment. Some information is, we all know, some misinformation, but there's lots of guidance out there and lots of themes that are coming through. So I think it's a case of also just watching the space as we continue through. We're also, I want to say really early, we're not trying to paint digital health and digital health tools as in a really negative light. There's some amazing things that it will bring, hopefully help with health equity, help access to services in different places, and also enhance our practice that we deliver to kiritaki. But we are going to have a bit of a chat today about some of the considerations and things to look out for when we are considering using digital health tools. There is going to be a Q&A as we go, and we'll do our best to get those questions answered today. However, if we don't get to them, we will send answers out to everybody who's here today, so we'll make sure we answer those at some point. So probably a good place to start for us all is what is digital health? At the moment, we're hearing lots about AI, but we've taken a bit more of a broader view of digital health, and the definition that we're using really is one from World Health Organization. And that digital health is the field of knowledge and practice associated with the development and use of digital technologies to improve health. Following areas are commonly understood to be part of related to digital health. So we've got artificial intelligence, we've got big data, blockchain, health data and health information, the infodemic, the Internet of Things, interoperability, and of course telehealth, telemedicine, as we often do as physiotherapists. So straight away, we're not just talking about AI today. We're talking about everything from our management systems that we use within our practices, triaging tools, scribing tools, telehealth, emails, the way we communicate with people is all encompassed within digital health. So it's a really wide view. And the board, Te Poari, is currently looking at what the requirements going forward might be for digital health. We know we've already got things within the framework, within the code of ethics. We've got things within the telehealth standard. So we're really going to be exploring over the next few months what that might look like going forwards, and we'll keep you absolutely updated there. And also bearing in mind too that it's not just the physiotherapy board that has requirements, that when we're looking at digital health, we're also considering things like privacy law, health information privacy code, the regulations around retention. It becomes quite big quite quickly, but not to get overawed by it, but it's just something that we just need to do bear in mind as we go through. So great opportunity to introduce the panel today. We've got a panel who have lots of differing backgrounds and experiences. So I'll start with Annalise. Annalise, kia ora, welcome.
Ko Annalise Jones toka ingoa. I work for Body in Motion, and my role is Head of Operations Quality in the physiotherapy, allied health space, and we're based in Tauranga, Bay of Plenty, but deliver services across Bay of Plenty, Waikato, and Taranaki.
Gloria's next on my screen.
Kia ora koutou, ko Gloria Paterson, Toka Tumai. I'm the professional lead for physiotherapy at Te Toka Tumai, Auckland, within Te Whatu Ora, and have recently completed the requirements for a Postgraduate Diploma in Digital Health from the University of Auckland. Kia ora.
Matt, down in the deep south. Kia ora, welcome.
Kia ora koutou, ko Matthew Dick Toka Wingua. Work down in Dunedin at the School of Physiotherapy. I'm the director of clinics down here, so we have a commercial operation that has clinical placements offered for our students. So we're guiding them in their journey towards being a registered physiotherapist. Kia ora.
And welcome, Dr. Karatiana.
Kia ora koutou, ko Karatiana Tauru Toka Wingua. I'm an AI and data consultant, and the chair of the AI Forum's Kahui Māori. So I do a lot of work with data ethics and governance in the AI space, and particularly in the health space. So, kia ora.
Dr. Karatiana, I might actually begin with you. I think starting with the base of what does data mean to people? What does data mean to Māori? And then how does the space we've got an intersecting space of a lot of data being collected. What does that look like in the health space, and what does data mean to Māori, which we need to consider when we're collecting and using data?
Yep, sure. So from a Te Ao Māori perspective, data is a taonga, and so subject to the principles of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. The Waitangi Tribunal have made a couple of reports. One of them is the Hauora report, which talks about health. So, and there's a huge amount of information in there about the inequities and the bias in the health system, and how you can basically combat those issues. So from a personal, an individual perspective, health data is more than just binary. It's more than digital. You mentioned the word before about spiritual well-being. So for many Māori, they associate their health data with being, aligning with their spiritual well-being, their mental well-being, and their physical well-being, as well as their community well-being. So so in my opinion, Māori health data is sacred, and it should be treated with respect. I think applying Māori data sovereignty principles will help. It'll actually combat inequities. And when you're using that data with AI, applying Māori data sovereignty principles it's going to benefit you as practitioners. It'll benefit the communities, and hopefully it'll increase the benefits and the health outcomes for the individuals. So, and of course, saying all of this, I mean, there is large populations in the Māori world who are too scared to have their information digitized because they're worried about the spiritual attacks, or they're worried about the data being used against them. So I think there's a huge amount of considerations there from a Māori perspective, but I think the most important thing is being respectful and trying to apply the principles of Te Tiriti with the health data. Kia ora.
Sure. I really like exactly what you said there about data not being binary, which we often think about when we think about computers and we think about digital health tools, about we're ones and zeros. But there's always a person behind that, and that probably brings me to an early point around discussions we've had over the last few months with some of the people on this group around informed consent and what does informed consent look like. And again, it's knowing what's going to happen to data once it goes into a system, and people being informed. So we've got the informed consent standard within the framework itself. And I'm thinking maybe coming to you, Annalise, first, as I understand, you're using some digital tools and using a digital health platform for patient management of things. How does that work in practice with yourself and staff around gaining informed consent to gather that information?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, and it's not where the data journey starts, because there needs to be a lot of due diligence before you're even getting to the informed consent stage, that you're satisfied as a business or organisation that you know exactly what's going to happen to the data. So that's probably, really important that you have done the work up front. And then the informed consent process looks different depending on the tool, but the principles are the same. And probably the key thing some of the tools that we're looking at is that the informed consent is ongoing for every interaction, and that it's clearly documented throughout the process.
Matthew, just coming to you, I know we said the other day that we were talking about some of the considerations and some of the due diligence that Annalise was talking about, and I think you're working with an organisation, large organisation that's got that ability to do due diligence. Is that something that individuals within you think are mindful of at the moment, or is it something that maybe people are missing in it?
So being part of the university, we have an obligation to make sure everything we do has been scrutinised by every different department that's going to have a hand in it. So cybersecurity is one of our big ones. We also have developers that can give us information on what types of products out there, what are going to be best suited for us. So when it comes to choosing a new platform or something different that we want to use, some new technology, we go through a very long, drawn-out process that is specific to us. So we have to do a lot of due diligence. It has a lot of paperwork associated with it, whereas people in the public won't have access to the same resources that we have, or not necessarily understand the same sorts of risks that will come out. So there's a lot of trust and assumptions, I think, that people in the public are facing with, and it's becoming aware of what type of questions you should be asking at a minimum, and who is best to ask those questions to. So yeah, it is difficult. It's new. And there's a lot of products out there. People are wowed by all the different things that are out there. So taking a bit of time and patience and doing your due diligence is probably the most important thing to start off with in this day and age.
Just actually sticking with you, Matt, that we were talking a couple of days ago just about the with teaching students, and you phrase around being skeptical, just making sure you're being skeptical around what we're actually signing up for when we do take on some of these tools, but also the fact that underneath that we're still using our core physiotherapy skills.
Yeah, so our job is to get our students up to competency level, and that competency level has to be done without any bells and whistles. It has to be done with just their own ability. So part of that is being competent with any type of assessment in any environment. And so when we do look at taking on digital technologies, it's almost allowing them to prove that they're capable of doing their foundation work first, and then upskilling to the next level, having the right to go up to digital health. So they can be critical in what's being produced back to what they recognise as a really good standard.
Yeah. Good. Gloria, I know you're working for a large organisation, but you've also been working, also in studying, as you said. Is there a tendency for, or there's that move towards, there's a shiny new toy, we should all grab it and to sort of, there's a new toy to play with, so we go and play with this toy. What's your experience across it all so far?
I think like any suggestion of change or change in practice or introduction of new, whether it be a clinical skill that you might have picked up on a CPD event, or a new technology that you might be trying to introduce to practice, I think we're always going to have our early, mid, and late adopters, and equally pockets of reluctant adopters. That it's really important, irrespective, I think, of whether you're a small team or a big organization, that we're looking to meet people where they're at, understand what the barriers are for them, whether it's personal or within their practice or within perhaps the patient cohort they might work with, what are the barriers, and also understand whether what we're suggesting or what options are available, are they really going to be a value add or at least a non-inferior choice. And I think ultimately there is a piece around making sure we're offering our patients and their whānau choice, and then that choice isn't being limited by what the clinicians are kind of willing to offer one way or the other. So I always think it's that balance between the clinician comfort, confidence, competence in delivering something versus patient whānau acceptance and expectations. So yeah, I think it's you get pockets of it whether you're big or small, I think.
Yeah, and I know we were discussing the early adopters the other day. Is early adoption a really good thing, or is it some people just jumping in quick, or are we actually doing exactly that, the due diligence? And some people who are holding back a little bit are saying, hold on, actually, we just got to check things out a little bit more before we jump in there.
Yeah, and that's been some of the feedback from the AI governance group within Te Whatu Ora, that part of the reasoning for not being super early adopters of some of the AI technology available was wanting to watch and really understand what the broader implications might be. And we've started to see a bit of a shift in that now with some technologies being available. So yeah, sometimes the watchful waiting approach can be helpful so that you're not quickly trying to dial back or undo the potential for harm.
Yeah. I'm going to put you on the spot there as well, Gloria, while I've got you there. And you had a great example of a friend of yours talking about signing up to something non-health related, but that gave away information that they thought or no sort of inkling that was going to be a problem.
Yeah, and even just speaking, Damon, signing on to this, there was an agreement I had to click to get on it that gave some blurb about AI, and even knowing what I was about to go into and even being quite conscious of everything we've been talking about these last few months, it was a very quick skim and then an I agree. And I think we all have a tendency to do that to greater or lesser extent. Yeah, so I think that's just an interesting observation that there are spaces we seem to be quite willing to accept terms and conditions or agree to certain things without necessarily reading the fine print or even reading the large print, I think, in some cases.
Yeah. The one that always jumps to mind is whenever we install a new app on our phone or a new device and it says, can I have permission to your mic and your camera? And we just go, yeah, right. And then we complain because we think it's spying on us. We told it could, depending on the permissions. We've given it all the other one that I know some of us have talked about, which is updates to privacy terms and conditions on the ongoing basis. And we all just go, yep, updated terms and conditions, but things may have changed massively within what they're sort of asking us to sign away. And that brings me just back to you, Matt, about we've talked earlier about not only just being the due diligence during, but also that regular, as we do with all our other skills, just regularly updating or keeping it regular because things may change in front of us.
Yeah, it's not having that assumption that things are always going to stay the same. You've got to stay up to date with what you're using. If they've been sold, what's happening to that data, that my terms and conditions changing, but also looking at how the information that's being produced is how accurate it is. So no AI or any technology is 100% accurate. So you have to be critical in what you're getting in terms of an output. And that's what a lot of what's being worked on at the university at the moment. So they're playing a bit of catch up in how they view AI in the university as an education tool. So it's not so much being adverse to it anymore. They recognise that it's here, it has to be used. And what they want is all of their university students coming out the other end from all departments to be AI literate. So that's understanding what models they're using, what limitations are, how they can appropriately use them, and how to really critically appraise what sorts of information is coming out the other end. So there's improper use of digital tools, AI specifically, but then there's absolute benefits and proper use that should be promoted and celebrated almost.
Excellent. Dr. Karaitiana, I was thinking about your much broader background in AI. Is there, probably not so much from a developer point of view, but more from the user point of view, do you think that there's tricks or that there's things that are tripping people up that they're not considering? And I think data sovereignty and use of data is one of them. Are there other areas where you think people need to be looking into an AI when they're using it?
Yeah, I think the other panelists covered most of it, but I think most people, as I said, don't read the terms and conditions. If something is offered for free, then it's not actually for free. You're probably selling all your personal data. And what people don't realize is that there's actual companies that gather your data, then on-sell it to another data collection company, and they match up all your data. And that's how you get things like adverts targeted at, solely at you. And there's just, huge breaches. I think where possible, if you're, using the internet, try and turn off cookies, use a private browser. I think, there's just so many issues. And even just, as was also mentioned, just making sure you keep up to date in the media about privacy issues. We've saw some transcription AI software recently not notify the end users, but switched to using all your voice for training data. LinkedIn, I think, did the same thing last year. It didn't advertise the fact, but it just kind of changed the terms of conditions. And they can do that because you've accepted those terms and conditions when you first signed up to something. In terms of your patient data, again, I think that's part of the informed consent process. You should be very well aware of where the data is stored and what will happen to that data of your patients or of your clients. And just, and generally remember that the data can be taken from your cell phone, from internet-connected devices like smartwatches, as well as your computers.
Yeah. We said we were going to talk about it, but we'll bring it up. In the case of organisation like 23andMe, where they collected genetic testing data for a long time and went bankrupt, and suddenly they've decided that the only way to recoup money is to start getting you to opt out of their model. Otherwise, they're selling your data on to other people. And I think they were a very interesting company who put in their privacy, and apparently it's quite common to put in your privacy terms and conditions. These privacy terms and conditions may change at any time. And again, we've agreed to it. If we don't read it, we've agreed to it. So I think it's a fascinating one. I think with all the good intentions that everyone has at the beginning, sometimes when the bankruptcy hits and the liquidate just turn up suddenly, things can change. At least I'm thinking about working in practice, and in terms of, have you had any, and in general, when you look at vendors, how hard is it to say no? Are they the ones providing most of the sort of due diligence information, or is it something that you delve, much deeper into before you make a decision?
Yeah, that's a really good example. And it's also a really good example of that it's not set and forget. So if you're doing diligence on a product or a tool that you want to keep understanding what's happening to the data or any changes in their privacy terms or things like that. And then just making sure that you're getting good stakeholder feedback. So for us, that's looked like engaging with the people who are using it, clients, clinicians, administration staff, to understand, is it really, as big a benefit as it was perceived to be, what the vendor told us, and then keep going with that process of understanding, is it really delivering on what we thought it would, or the diligence that we did on it. But yes, predominantly you're gathering information from vendors in other areas where you can to understand the alignment with privacy and health information. But that takes, a bit of a process, and that's okay to take that time. I think also another good point is just to, there's a lot of hype around a lot of tools, and it's okay to sit back and wait on some of those. And for us, some of the tools that we've reviewed have just been let's just wait and see if that actually becomes integrated to something that we're already using, or let's see how it evolves. If it doesn't quite meet our needs, or we're not quite certain about compliance from this tool for now. So we'll look at it later, but for now it's a wait and see.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting about the needs as well, of coming back one step and saying not what's available out there for us to start with, but what do I actually need to enhance, as opposed to sort of starting with, as we said earlier, the shiny tools. I'll get killed for this story because my wife is actually a physiotherapist who's probably watching right now. But we used to have this thing at home where she loved storage boxes, great, amazing storage boxes, and we'd have storage boxes brought home. They're beautiful, they're really good. But we ran out of things to store in them because it wasn't what we needed. It's just we used the tool. We sort of brought tools home for things that weren't necessarily needed at the time. They've all been used now, so it's good. But I think that was my thinking last night at 2:00 in the morning, was around that, going back a step further and say, what do we actually need and want to enhance our practice? And as Matt, you said the other day about earning the right to use it. So being a good physiotherapist, using all the tools that we use as a physiotherapist, and then we add that on top. And is that really the basis for students still? It's the basic, we're still going for everything we need to be a physiotherapist and then adding on those tools?
Yeah, 100%. We can't rely on our students only being able to perform an assessment on with the use of some fancy digital technology, because they may go somewhere there's no access to internet, or they might not have that available to them. So equity through services is really important. So your basic physiotherapy assessment will always stand true at a competency level. So they can take that with them anywhere in the world, and then they can add, they can level up, so to speak, if you want to think of a gaming term. They can add onto their practice with some of these other tools that might, again, enhance what they're actually doing, as long as it meets a need that they see it there. It's not just there for show. And I think that's one of the draws that can be seen at the moment is, this looks fancy, I'll have a good crack at this. But really, when you step back, like telehealth, you got to see, well, what's the need? What is the purpose of this tool? How is it going to improve my service to my patients and my community?
Thank you. You brought up a really interesting point that's next on my list, which was equity as well. I don't know if many of us will remember probably beginning telehealth during that period a few years ago, where it became apparent quite quickly to many of us that it was a great tool for many kiritaki, because we could keep in contact with them, we could perform assessments and things. But for those who didn't have access to technology, internet access, all those things are actually limited. And whether or not sometimes our technology, although we look to decrease equity gaps, actually makes them wider. So it's that consideration around who's got access and making sure that it's a tool that people can use, and not amplifying the equity issues that are already there. Gloria, with telehealth, is telehealth something that's still being used a lot within Tata Ora?
That's a great question. I think I'd be challenged to speak to how we might define a lot, but I would suggest it's something that is still in reasonably high use. And we do often remind people that even those over-the-phone consultations or discussions or provision of education or information or advice, it does still count as telehealth. Email communication as well also counts as telehealth. But if we're talking about the video consultations, yeah, look, I think absolutely it's something that's still being used to provide some great examples. Might be something like some of our rehabilitation contracts involve some of our Hauraki Gulf Islands and whānau who live there, and so to try to strike the balance between rehab intensity requirements and also feasibility of getting out in person to see these people on a regular basis, when and where possible, telehealth can be a really good enabler for that. But we are really mindful across the motu that there are still these sort of digital deserts. Like, I think that maybe is what I've heard the terminology be, where there's populations that just still don't have the internet access. So, it doesn't work everywhere, but can certainly be a supportive tool to help deliver services, particularly where there might be other specifically time barriers, or whānau that maybe can't get into an outpatient appointment because they've got childcare responsibilities and that sort of thing. And I think it's still about being mindful about what the limitations are and being really clear about what they might be, about the difference between in-person and online consultations, so that everyone's got a real understanding of what the limitations might be, and also when a particular approach may need to stop and can't be kind of taken any further. So, yeah, I'd say that applies to telehealth as well as lots of other digital health tools that we've been sort of talking about today.
It's sticking with equity and bias is actually was something which I was really not surprised, but really it was a light bulb moment for me when I first started looking into this. Was again large data sets which don't include minority populations and things. Dr. Karatiana, I know with a lot of the AI models, is that one of the difficulties with them is that actually if they're built in a different place and they're sort of applied to somewhere that may not get the answer that you're after?
Oh, it's more about the data that the AI is trained on. So if you're using data from a predominantly South American population, it's probably not going to match up to Maori, Pacifica peoples in New Zealand. So yeah, I mean, it's a real concern. Ways we can get around the bias issue is, I mean, we're a small country, but we should be able to ask for transparency with algorithms, for example. I mean, they're usually commercially sensitive, but you get a plain English overview of what the algorithm does, where the data came from. And then we have tools available to us, such as AI impact assessments, privacy impact assessments, algorithm impact assessments. And so, yeah, it's important that we utilize those tools for any AI that we are using, whether it's, using in the business place, in the workplace. So what that will do, if you need to work with the local Māori communities and other communities, but you'll be able to very quickly ascertain where there is bias. And the bias is always, well, I say almost always unintended. But yeah, so you can create your own impact assessments and specifically look for biases against, whether it's against people who might be overweight or whether it's against women, Māori, any sort of minority group. So yeah, and it's increasingly becoming business as usual with AI.
Yeah, and it's I suppose with this with such an international community now, it's very easy just to roll things out through different countries. Once it's become successful in one, then we'll just roll it out to the other without training it within a specific population there. That it's probably not a problem that's going away quickly, is it? No. Thank you very much for that. I think that's the all considerations that everything we've spoken about so far today are things that, as I was going through my own journey of working through digital health, was often sort of, except not, there were more light bulb moments, of course. But I think those we've gone through talking about doing due diligence on an ongoing basis. Do you actually need this tool that you're looking at? Don't be afraid to wait. I think that's one which we'll talk about in a second as well. Things are moving extremely quickly, and certainly at the board at Te Poari, we've got about as good a crystal ball as anyone else of knowing where this is going to look in 2 years' time. So we could look back on this webinar and laugh about it in a couple of years' time because things have moved on so incredibly much that it's that it's outdated. Hallucinations is probably the other topic that I just wanted to cover. I don't know if anyone on the panel's run into them yet, but we've certainly had a couple of goes within health of this is simply not true. Or similar. And again, as a group, I know we discussed and Matt's said earlier about the human oversight, just ensuring that there is human oversight, that it's not replacing what we do, and we don't sort of just toddle off and let it go on its own little due course and things. Annalise, I know you've had some experience with scribing tools. And is there something that A, you found accurate, and B, that most of the clinicians are aware that, hey, this is not always going to capture everything that I wanted to capture?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that they are just tools. They're actually not a replacement for the human using the tool. And we've been at pains to explain to anyone using a scribing tool that you are still the clinician 100% responsible for the content that eventually gets saved into the documentation. So it's not perfect, that's for sure, and every AI scribing tool has to be checked, and so it's just not a valid excuse to say that was what came out of the scribe tool. So just making sure that the human oversight is really strong and that they are just tools that we're using. So if they integrate well with what you're using, that's great, but you still have to do this really good final check, and also make sure that you have captured the things that haven't been said in the consultation. I know you and I talked about, those red flags that you think about but don't say if you were writing with your hand, making sure that you've actually documented, then even if you're using an AI scribe tool, that you've documented, the thought about the red flags, or that you've got some kind of risk assessment happening there.
Yeah, I love that conversation we're having. It also reminded me of that. We can really put the fear into kiritaki very quickly by saying exactly what we think and having it scribe it back. There's a possibility this person has a serious condition. The poor kiritaki is sitting over there. It normally goes in our brain, and we'll think about it for a few minutes before we write it down. And I think that's so training around actually the use of, once they do come into practice, actually the use of the tools themselves. Not just letting people. So I think change management and having those plans for how does that get integrated for clinicians or physiotherapists with totally different learning patterns as well, or learning needs, is something I think is just to consider when we're looking at those. But I certainly know we've in the past we've recorded some Zoom meetings and Teams meetings with a summary given to us later that bore no resemblance to the meeting that I was in. As hilariously funny as it was, it just made it a bit of a waste of time. So I really do thank you guys for the input today, because there is certainly as we've travelled, Madam and I have been around the country this year and talking to physiotherapists, that there is a little bit of a, not so much panic, but jeepers, I better get onto this and I better be starting to use these things, where in fact, I know from the panelists, we've all spoken that actually take your time. Slow adoption isn't necessarily the bad thing, because we're just waiting for things maybe to settle a little bit, or the next version to come out, or find out what is happening with data on an ongoing basis. Just before we leave, and we'll look to answer all the questions and get the answers out to you soon, is really just go around the panel. Gloria, I'll start with you. Anything else to add in your learnings from digital health so far?
I think there's a lot of exciting possibility. I also think there's a lot we still need to better learn and understand, both as clinicians and also getting a better understanding of what the public, what our patients think we are doing with digital data, and also what they're happy for us to do, and certainly within a Te Whatu Ora context, as we're getting more and more interconnected systems, which I think will have a lot of benefit from a safe health delivery perspective. I think we still need to be really mindful of, and Damon, we've had conversations about this before, having as much of a critical thought about which patient records we're accessing, but also once we're in there, what we're looking at. because there is more and more we can see. And I think we need to be considered about whether it is appropriate and whether it will inform the delivery of safe and appropriate care if we access those particular records, whatever they may be, or what they even may be in the future. But I think the opportunity to use our bigger data sets for really robust quality improvement, I think, is really exciting, particularly in our big healthcare systems like within Te Whatu Ora. And I think as a profession, we should be excited about the possibility. We should be cautious about rushing in too fast. I think we should develop an understanding of what our patient needs are and what their expectations and understandings are, and continue to work as a really collaborative profession, which I think we usually are, to continue to grow and develop in this space together. I think it's really exciting, but we do want to just be, with a measure of caution, or in Matt's word, skepticism, healthy skepticism, to make sure we're keeping everybody safe, including ourselves.
Thanks, Gloria. Dr. Konajiana, for those starting their AI journey in physiotherapy and in health, any words of advice for when they're starting?
Be cautious. Be aware that there's lots of different cultural perspectives to consider. So just from a Te Ao Māori perspective, for example, there's a lot of people who don't feel comfortable using telehealth. If they are forced to use telehealth, they may not be as open and honest as they would if you were physically sitting in front of that person. Just in terms of the transcribing AI, just point out that transcribing AI is usually really bad with non-English words, especially Māori words. Transcribing software would often call me Katrina instead of Karaitiana, and there's lots of little nuances there to be aware of. So just be careful of that. And I think, just be aware that there is a digital and AI divide in New Zealand, and it primarily targets Māori, Pacifica, disabled and rural communities. So just to be aware of that, and keep a human in the loop with everything, double check everything that AI says, because it can and it does get things wrong. So, kia ora.
Matthew, from the educator of our physiotherapists of tomorrow, anything we can be doing for those of us who are already out there in the physiotherapy working space?
I think everyone should be curious and go out and actually have a play with things in a safe environment. So use anonymized data. That's relatively safe if you're going to engage. If you do buy a subscription, then that's even better. But go and actually see what the limitations are, see what the potentials are. We play with it a lot in an anonymized way, so we can see and guide our students how to use it in the health context, and it's really powerful. But as soon as you come across a hallucination, it's hilarious, and you just go challenge AI on that, and it'll own it. So then you're able to realize what sorts of issues are going to come up, rather than being passive in that journey. You want to be quite active, and then when it's ready to go, you'll know when it's going to enhance your practice, and time to take the leap.
Thank you, Matt. And Annalise, from someone who's done due diligence on some systems already, again, for those starting that journey, any advice on where to start?
Yeah, I would say probably practical adoption over the hype. Lots of the tools look really exciting, but taking the time to engage and test with all your stakeholders first is really important to understand whether it really is of benefit to your organisation. Sitting back and watching is fine. Look at how far we've come in the last 12 months and think about the tools that you were using 12 months ago compared to now. Things change pretty rapidly in this environment, so it's okay to sit back, watch what works in another agency, see what's endorsed by other agencies or organisations that you trust, and then if you feel comfortable with that for your organisation, that might be a better strategy to go with if you don't have all the resources to do the diligence. and then just continuous feedback. It's not a set and forget. So only if you keep testing, learning, and gathering feedback will you understand whether it's really a benefit to your organisation. There's cost to consider, there's integration of workflows, and you need to understand that sort of cost benefit from all of the tools that you use.
Kia ora. Well, kia ora everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to the panel for your time and for your expertise and for your experience. We really, really, really do appreciate it, and I'm sure everyone online appreciates it as well. We'll get those Q&As, we'll get the answers out to you, and we'll also have a video up of this as well. So to close, we'll close with karakia. Back to our daily busy lives, but thank you for joining us for the last 45 minutes. Kia whakairia te tapun, kia wātea a te ara, kia tūruki whakataha ai, kia tūruki whakataha ai. Haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora everybody.
This has been a Physiotherapy Board Te Poari Tiaki Tinana podcast. It was recorded live in August 2025 as part of our regular webinar series. You can see a video version of this program at the education section of our website, where you can also learn more about the topics that were discussed. If you want to share your thoughts about it with us, you can email us at physio@physioboard.org.nz. Kia ora.